I think that I'm going through the examination in a logical way. It is not been possible to prioritize things completely without simply jumping from topic to topic because of the length of time that it has taken to deal with certain topics. But I do think that the pattern and practice of attempts at market division is a matter of priority.
Well, I won't cut off the questioning, but note the objection.
Let me ask you to go to a different issue of market division, or alleged market division. But before I do, let me just refer you to a Wall Street Journal article of July 23, 1998, entitled U.S. Probing Microsoft's Multimedia Role. Does that refresh your recollection as to whether you ever saw a Wall Street Journal article about alleged market division attempts between Microsoft and Apple?
Do you want to show us the article?
I have no objection to showing it. And I have no objection to marking it.
I don't care if it's marked.
Yeah, my purpose is just to try to refresh his recollection to see whether he recalls having ever seen this.
No.
Okay. In that case, let me show you a document marked as Government Exhibit 375. The second item on the first page is an email message from you to Jim Allchin and others dated October 12, 1997. Did you send this email October 12, 1997?
I don't remember it, but I have no reason to doubt that I did.
In the first paragraph, you say, quote, I have a critical meeting with Intel a week from Wednesday. I want to convince them that they need to stay away from Oracle NCs and work more closely with Microsoft, close quote. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have that meeting?
I had a meeting.
Do you recall having that meeting?
I don't know what you mean, that meeting.
You say, I have a critical meeting with Intel a week from Wednesday. Did you have that meeting?
I feel sure I had a meeting with Intel after this piece of email was sent.
In October of 1997?
Could have been November. You'd have to, let's see, no, October.
Let me ask you to look at the last paragraph under the heading, Sun byte codes are bad for them. And you say, quote, I want them to understand that helping NCs and Java will push us to do Windows and other software in Sun bytecodes, even if we don't rewrite them in Java, close quote. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
When you say, I want them to understand, are you referring to Intel?
I think so.
Did Microsoft make any effort to convince Intel not to help Sun and Java?
Not that I know of.
Did you or anyone at Microsoft attempt to convince Intel not to engage in any software activity?
Objection.
No.
Did you, or to your knowledge, anyone at Microsoft try to convince Intel that it should not engage in any software activity unless Microsoft was involved in that activity?
I'm sure we pointed out sometimes how sometimes a lack of communications between the two companies on various subjects, including software development, led to unfortunate unreliability and mismatch, which led to bad customer experiences.
And what did that lead you to ask Intel to do?
Oh, in general, to see if we couldn't do a better job communicating with each other so that people would have better experiences using the PC.
Did you tell, or did anyone, insofar as you are aware, from Microsoft tell Intel representatives that you did not want Intel's software engineers interfering with Microsoft's existing domination of the software side of the PC industry?
No.
Are you aware of a Intel operation referred to as the Intel Architecture Labs?
Yes.
Did you tell Intel Chief Executive Officer Andy Grove that you believed that Intel should shut down its Intel Architecture Labs?
No.
What did you understand the Intel Architecture Labs to be doing?
I can't claim to have a lot of expertise on the broad set of things the Intel Architecture Lab was doing.
What did you know the Intel Architecture Lab was doing?
They were doing some plumbing software to try to get some things to run on Windows 3.1 at one point. It's one thing I know they were doing, but in terms of their breadth of activities, and most of it I wouldn't have any familiarity with.
Did you believe that there was anything about what Intel was doing in the Intel Architecture Labs that was inconsistent with Microsoft's interest?
Well, the fact that their software didn't run with Windows 95 and would break if the user wanted to move up to Windows 95 was a subject of concern and discussion for us related to an overall set of projects that were sometimes called NSP, although that term had many meanings.
What does NSP stand for?
Sometimes it means native signal processing.
And how did what the Intel Architecture Labs was doing relate to NSP?
That was the plumbing.
For NSP?
I believe so.
Did you tell Intel CEO, Mr. Grove, that you believed that what Intel was doing in the Intel Architecture Labs was contrary to Microsoft's interests?
In a broad sense, no. In terms of some specific things that broke software for users, I did evidence that concern.
And you did so personally?
Personally and impersonally.
Did you ask Mr. Grove to cancel the Intel Architecture Labs work?
No.
Did you, or insofar as you're aware, anyone else at Microsoft, tell people at Intel that they should leave the software side of the PC business entirely to Microsoft?
Well, we were having a hard time coordinating our work with Intel, and we thought the quality of some of their work was very low, as well as not working with any of our new Windows work. We may have suggested at some point that the net contribution of their software activities could even be viewed to be negative.
Did you, or insofar as you are aware, anyone else at Microsoft, tell representatives of Intel that their software activities were inconsistent with cooperation between Intel and Microsoft?
The specific work they did that completely broke our work, I'm sure I indicated I didn't think that was a good idea for either company.
Other than the specific software that would not work on Windows 95 that Intel was working on, did you, or insofar as you were aware, anyone else at Microsoft, tell Intel representatives that the software work that Intel was doing was inconsistent with cooperation between Intel and Microsoft?
Well, there's some other things they did that created incompatibilities.
Incompatibilities between what and what?
between their software and Windows that was intended to run on Windows but created incompatibilities.
And did you tell them that that software also was not consistent with cooperation between Microsoft and Intel?
I doubt I used those words. I suggested that it wasn't helpful to any of their goals or our goals to have software that had incompatibilities and was low quality and broke.
Did you tell Intel representatives, or did, insofar as you're aware, any Microsoft employee tell Intel representatives that you were concerned about Intel's support for Netscape?
I don't remember that.
Do you remember telling Intel representatives that you were concerned that Intel's support for Netscape could allow Netscape to grow into a de facto standard?
No.
Did you tell representatives of Intel that you were concerned that Intel's use of Netscape could set up a positive feedback loop for Netscape that would allow it to grow into a de facto standard?
What do you mean Intel's use of Netscape?
I'm asking whether you told this to Intel. If you didn't,
Given that I don't know what you mean by Intel use of Netscape, if you're not going to clarify what you mean by that.
All I'm asking is whether you told them something, Mr. Gates. And if you tell them I didn't tell them that, not only would I not tell them that because I don't understand what it could be, that's an answer. But what I'm asking you is whether you told them that in words or in substance, and if you didn't, you didn't. Or if you say you didn't, you say you didn't. But all I want to do is get your answer.
And the witness's plea for clarification of the question is that when you add in the in substance part, then you would need to define the terms.
Well, let me try to approach it this way. I wouldn't have thought the term use is quite so ambiguous, but Mr. Gates, did you tell representatives of Intel that Intel using Netscape in a Windows environment would not be a problem so long as Intel did not assist in setting up a positive feedback loop for Netscape that allowed it to grow into a de facto standard? Did you say that, or write that, or communicate that? Those words, or words that you recognize to mean the same thing?
Objection.
I'm still confused about what you mean Intel using something. You're talking about like in their internal IT systems? What's this about?
Mr. Gates, either you told that to Netscape or you didn't. If you tell me you didn't tell it to Netscape, I'll go on to the next question.
I did not.
Okay?
Let's get one point clear. When the witness has some confusion on a question, should he or should he not bring that to your attention?
I think the witness should tell me that I don't understand your question.
So that's what he did, and you seemed annoyed.
I don't think I seemed annoyed. I think that there is perhaps, given the amount of time that we've spent on defining words that I think have ordinary and clear meanings, I may be anxious to move that along as much as possible. But if the witness simply says, I don't understand the question, I will rephrase it. There may be times when I do become a little annoyed when the witness, instead of doing that, decides to rephrase the question and answer an entirely different question from the one I've asked. But if the witness
Which
simply
didn't just
says,
happen.
I don't want to debate it with you, the record will show what happened. But if the witness simply says in response to a question, I don't understand that question, I'll take that for an answer and I'll rephrase it. Did you, Mr. Gates, personally ever express concern to Mr. Grove that Intel's software work was beginning to overlap with Microsoft's software work?
Only in the sense that the low quality and incompatibilities were inconsistent with any goals that Intel might have had in doing that work.
Why was that a concern?
Because Intel was wasting its money by writing low-quality software that created incompatibilities for users, and those negative experiences weren't helpful for any goal that Intel had.
Were they harmful to any goal that Microsoft had?
Only in the sense of hurting PC popularity by creating negative user experiences.
Is it your testimony that your only concern with what Intel was doing in the software area was a concern to avoid negative user experiences?
That's right. Low quality and incompatibilities.
Which, according to you, would lead to negative user experiences.
That's right.
Did you, or insofar as you were aware, anybody at Microsoft ever tell Intel representatives in words or in substance that they should stick to hardware and leave the software to Microsoft?
Objection.
I'm sure there were times when we were frustrated about the quality and incompatibility problems created about their software, where someone might have expressed that sentiment in an extreme feeling about how tough it had been for Intel to do quality work that would have advanced any Intel goal.
Were you aware of any work that Intel was doing relating to Internet software development?
I can't think of any.
Did you ever express any concern to anyone at Intel, or to your knowledge, did anyone at Microsoft ever express any concern to anyone at Intel concerning Intel's Internet software work, if any?
I don't think Intel ever did any Internet software work.
If they did, I take it as your testimony, no one ever told you about it.
That's right.
Did you, or to your knowledge, anyone at Microsoft express concern to Intel about the success of Java, or what you have referred to in this deposition as Java runtimes?
From time to time, we'd have general discussions with Intel about things going on in the industry, and I'm sure our views of the Java runtime competition may have come up in some of those discussions.
Could I have the question and answer read back, please?
Did you or to your knowledge, anyone at Microsoft expressed concern to Intel about the success of Java, or what you have referred to in this deposition as Java runtimes? Answer. From time to time, we have general discussions with Intel about things going on in the industry, and I'm sure our views of the Java runtime competition may have come up in some of those discussions.
In those discussions, did you or others from Microsoft express concern about Java and Java runtimes popularity to Intel representatives?
I think it's likely in those general discussions, we talked about some of the two opportunities and competitive things going on, including our view of what was going on in Java runtime.
Did you tell representatives of Intel, or did, to your knowledge, anyone from Microsoft tell representatives of Intel that in Microsoft's opinion, the wide distribution of Java and Java runtimes was incompatible with the interests of both Intel and Microsoft?
Actually, there's one aspect of Java that could have an effect on Intel and would have no effect on Microsoft, so it's completely orthogonal. And I pointed out to them what that was. And so I did think there was one thing they ought to think about in terms of where the world of software development was going, but it wasn't an issue that related to Microsoft.
Irrespective of what you said about that particular issue, did you or others from Microsoft tell Intel, in words or in substance, that as a general matter, a general conclusion, the popularity of Java and Java runtimes was not in your joint interests? And joint interests, I mean Microsoft and Intel.
No, there was nothing about it that related to any joint interest. There was one thing about it that related to some of Intel's interests, and there were other things about it that related to some of Microsoft's interests, but there's no overlap between those two.
Let me put the question this way. Did you, or to your knowledge, others from Microsoft, tell Intel that for whatever reasons you believed that the widespread distribution of Java and Java runtimes was inconsistent with both interests of Intel and interests of Microsoft?
Well, it's like you're trying to rephrase what I said in a more inaccurate way. I told you there's an aspect of it that I thought they should think about that related to them only. That's the bytecode piece. And then there's an aspect of it that relates to us only. So there's no end there. There's just a piece that might have been of interest to them that I articulated, and then there's the part that relates strictly to us.
Let me take it in two pieces. Did you tell Intel representatives that you believed that there were reasons why the widespread distribution of Java and Java runtimes were not in Intel's interests?
Not in that general sense. I pointed out the very specific aspect of it, the bytecode aspect, that I thought they ought to think about that had no effect on us.
Did you tell Intel representatives that there were things about the wide distribution of Java and Java runtimes that Microsoft believed was not in Microsoft's interests?
It's likely that in the general discussion, the notion of some of the new competitive activities, including the Java runtime issues would have come up in some discussions with Intel, but not related to anything they were doing.
Did you ask Intel to keep you apprised of what software work Intel was doing?
I think I made that request in vain on several occasions. Nothing ever came of it.
Is it your testimony that they refused to keep you apprised of the software work they were doing?
No, I just said to them that if they were, whatever software work they were doing that was intended to help Windows, they should talk to us about it early on if they wanted to have the highest probability that it would in fact achieve that goal. And unfortunately, we never achieved that result. That is, they would do things related to Windows that without talking to us in advance, and then once they'd done the work, there'd be some incompatibilities between what they had done and Windows itself.